Just a boring 11-2 football team, Rube. The Eagles clinch a playoff berth. They have a chance to clinch the division this weekend. Everything's going well, right?
Almost everything.
Almost everything. This is the Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We'll talk some actual football today. We have some takeaways from speaking to the coordinators. We have our power rankings. We have a bunch of questions to get to later in this show, but we have to start with the biggest topic in town. Brandon Graham on Monday evening goes on the Brandon Graham show and spoke openly about the relationship between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, and that stems from A.J.'s comments in the postgame locker room after the win over Carolina about the passing offense. And then on Tuesday morning, Brandon Graham goes back on the radio to apologize for his comments, to say that he assumed a little bit too much before making them. A little bit of a weird situation here, Rube, with a good football team that has won 9 games in a row.
A little bit of a weird situation. Yeah, it's really strange, and BG is about the last guy you'd expect to do this. I know he regrets it. I'm sure. I mean, he's this is not who he is. It's not, but he said it and it's out there, and, it's good. And he started apologizing, I guess, Monday evening. He was at an event. I guess Connor Barwin and Chris Long their foundation had an event, and John Clark ran into him, and he said he regretted it. It's weird because, he made some assumptions, and they were fair assumptions, but you can't do that. And, we talked about this. I think my initial reaction when AJ said, he was asked what has to improve with the offense, and he just said one word: passing. My initial interpretation was he meant everybody from Kellen to Nick to, Doug Nussmeier to Jalen to everything involved in the passing game. BG kind of took that and ran with it, and kind of implied broadly that he was talking about Jalen and AJ's relationship, which maybe they're not as close as they used to be. I just, but it was all very weird. And, it's the last thing you expect when a team hasn't lost a game in 3 months. It's the last thing you need is a distraction like this. So we'll see where it leads. Series of really strange, bizarre. And look, AJ's having a weird, AJ's got the highest yards per target in Eagles history. I was just looking that up this morning. He missed 3 games, but he's still on pace. Like, if you project his he's on pace to play 14 games. If you project his production over 17 games, he's over 1,400 yards again. The last couple games, he just hasn't gotten the targets, and he's been open and hasn't gotten the ball, and he's frustrated. But it's a strange situation. It's hard to really get a grasp on exactly what's happening, and when Nick talked about it on back on WIP on Tuesday morning, his regularly scheduled paid appearance. So we'll see what happens next, and we'll see what AJ and Jalen say on Wednesday. If AJ talks, Jalen will talk. He talks every Wednesday. But it's the last thing this team needs.
Yeah, there are a lot of layers to this. Yeah. And I want to start before we really get into this discussion that I understand there's some people out there who are like, God, I don't want to hear this. This is so negative. This is but I mean, this is kind of what it is, right? Like a player, the longest tenured player on the team, goes on the biggest radio station, sports talk radio station in the city, and talks about this openly. We got to talk about
second biggest in the country.
We got to figure it out, right? So that's kind of where we are. We're going to talk about it. If you want to fast forward, I get it, but I think it's a discussion worth having, and I think it's a nuanced discussion, and we'll do our best to not be overly reactionary to every little thing about it, because I think we'll be able to kind of give a nuanced approach to it. Going back to AJ, which is where it starts, right? His frustration with the passing offense. AJ Brown was not the only player frustrated by the passing offense in that game. There were certainly pockets in that locker room I was in that were feeling that way. Devontae Smith expressed some frustration. Jordan Mailata did. Lane Johnson did. Jalen Hurts I wouldn't say expressed frustration, but he admitted it needs to be better. I don't know if Jalen's personality allows him to express frustration like that. I think where AJ, I don't even want to say got into trouble. I think a lot of this stems from the brevity with which he spoke. I mean, he spoke so vaguely that it left a lot up to interpretation. And when you do that, people are going to interpret, and you can't really control it at that point. So when he says, what needs to improve about the offense, and you just say passing instead of, hypothetically saying, I think we need to be better, a little bit better passing the football. I'm a part of that. Like, I think it's a team effort. Like, when you just say the word passing, right or wrong, some people are going to take it to mean just the quarterback. And I understand from AJ's perspective, he's probably feeling vilified right now, because he's felt that way before in this city. He felt it last year. He's felt it, even in 22, I think, a little bit. So that's why, like, this is not just a one-off with him. It's like, I think there's some scar tissue there.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And that probably puts him in about a 99% minority of wide receivers who express frustration when they don't get the targets and catches and production that they want. He's an incredible player, and I get that. I understand it. I'd be frustrated too. And it's in his DNA. I mean, it's who he is. It's always been that way. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think it makes him a bad player or a bad teammate or a bad person. He knows how good he is. He knows how he can change games, how he can be a positive influence. And, passing offense had 100, I think they were under 100 net passing yards.
83 net passing yards.
83 net passing yards. The 4 sacks, you subtract that from the passing yards. So I get it, but I think that's a good point, that when you just blurt out passing,
and he's an emotional guy, I understand it. And there have been times after games where he doesn't want to speak, because
and he probably shouldn't have.
Yeah. And I don't want to say he shouldn't have, because part of my job is talking to athletes after games.
I'm glad
like
he did, but he probably shouldn't have.
Yeah. I think there are just lessons in it.
Yeah. But I mean, in the past, like when he's been frustrated, he'll just leave. He'll just leave the locker room and he won't say anything. And then by Wednesday or Thursday, Friday, whenever he talks, he's calmed down. But yeah, he left a lot unspoken, and that kind of opens the floodgates for interpretation.
Yeah. And I think that's what happened with Brandon Graham. So before we go further into this conversation, we have the 2 clips. First, Tuesday night, and then Wednesday morning. If you haven't, Monday night and Tuesday morning. If you've already heard the clips, bear with us. But I think it's important for this conversation to hear them first. So here's the first one, Brandon Graham on Monday night, courtesy of Odyssey Sports Radio 94 WIP.
The person that's complaining need to be accountable. And I'm just being honest. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he noticed. I don't know the whole story, but I know that one is trying. And I mean, 11 could be a little better with how he responds to things. And they was friends before this. It's like, man, but things have changed. And I understand that, because life happens. But it's the business side that we have to make sure that we don't let the personal get in the way of the business. And that's what we got to do better as right now, because we know it's an issue. Everybody's seeing some things, but we need to be able to talk things out as men. You know what I'm saying? But we need to let personal stuff go and let's get right for this game, because, man, it's like a lot of stuff, most of the time, it's just a conversation that just need to be had. But the person with the problem got to want to talk to the person other than others. Okay. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So the irony is not lost on us that he's doing this publicly when he says that he kind of faults AJ Brown for speaking publicly about an issue. And the irony is not lost on him either. In his apology, which we'll hear in a minute, he addresses that. But when we talked about like AJ being vague publicly and it leaving a lot up for interpretation, I mean, Brandon Graham kind of did that as well. When you're talking about you're not a part of the relationship between AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, and you're commenting on it. And in those words, it's like, well, are they friends, or did they used to be friends? Or like, are there personal things affecting them on the field? It left a lot that we don't know. And I think when something like that happens, it's easy to kind of run with it.
Yeah, a lot of vague comments being made. That's a theme of this. And the more, the more that happens, the more speculation there's going to be, and it's going to, and maybe there's an element of truth in what he's saying. Maybe there, but when he says, "I don't know the whole story," it kind of, puts some doubt in everything he's saying to me. It's like, I don't know the whole story, but I do know that they used to be friends. Yeah.
It was obviously like it, and well, let's actually listen to the apology. This was from Tuesday morning, again, courtesy Odyssey Sports Radio 94 WIP.
First, I want to start off by just, apologizing to my guys. I was going to see them today anyway, but I wanted to start here first publicly since we all was here, because I didn't want to make this. I made the assumption. I didn't know all the details, and I still don't. And I was just like, dang. Like, I really just saw everything that y'all saw with the video, and I just was reacting to that, and I should have used a little more logic on it. But it was more just on me, just wanting to, just wanting people to pretty much just, man, I just want to win, pretty much. And for me, I know that I didn't add to everything that I said I didn't want him to do. I did too. And, I want to own that as always. We got to stand up through the good and the bad. And so right now, I don't think it's that bad. I think it's a great thing, because chaos definitely, create diamonds. Well, pressure makes diamonds. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like this about to be something that we gonna bounce back from really good. And, we all make mistakes. And, this was one of my mistakes that, you're never too proud of no mistakes, but it's something that I'm definitely learned from. And I know for sure them guys, when I do talk to them, they going to understand where I'm coming from as far as, just on why I assume, just based off the video with AJ. And, man, I know that we going to get right, because, man, them boys definitely want to win. That's why he was frustrated. I'm a ride with AJ on the frustration, because he just want to win. He a winner. All of us just want to win for the city, and we all, made some mistakes in this.
All right. So you heard that from Brandon Graham. I thought it was important to play that. If what he's saying is true, that he just made assumptions based on like a 30-second video of AJ Brown about the relationship between the quarterback and receiver, it's not great. It's an unforced error. What did you make of that?
I don't know what to make of any of this, but he's also in the building. He's been in the building since, 15 years. So he sees the interactions between Jalen and AJ. So, the way I respond to the way my mind is like, well, maybe there's something there, that he's apologizing for saying what he said, but he also never really said that's not an issue, but maybe it is, maybe it's not. I just don't know, so, he apologized for saying it, but it's still out there, and something made him say that.
Yeah, toothpaste tube, right? You can't put it back in.
I think I texted that to you on Monday night.
That's one of my favorite expressions. It is true. So the way I look at this is, at worst, there's an interpersonal dynamic that's an issue between the quarterback and the star receiver that could potentially negatively impact the season. At best, this is a pretty big distraction that the Eagles now have to figure out how to navigate.
BG says it's a good thing.
Yeah, I
don't see that.
Yeah, I don't see that either. Now, maybe they can rally around this somehow.
They'll blame us.
Maybe it becomes, possibly. That's another thing. Like, I keep seeing, like, the media is trying to tear this team apart. I don't know. This is their longest tenured player on the radio talking about it. Yeah. That doesn't mean that there won't be overreactions to every little thing about it, but I don't know. It wasn't started by reporters or media. It was started by a pillar of the franchise.
Yeah, he'll be an Eagles Hall of Famer pretty soon. Somebody posted to me on social media it was wrong to run a story based on BG's comments until we had reaction from Jalen and AJ, which could be 5 days. Like, you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. Even when I started, it doesn't work that way. You get the story up, and as soon as Clarkey talked to BG, we added that. You try to make it balanced and present the whole story. And you had a story on the apology as soon as he made it this morning. So, Yeah.
And to act like this could not potentially be an issue, I think would be turning a blind eye to it.
Sure.
Because at the very least, like I mentioned, it's something they're going to have to deal with, and they're going to have to see if there is any fallout from it. I mean, if I'm AJ Brown, I'm not thrilled with Brandon Graham today. Like, even that dynamic is something to keep an eye on. And for BG to do this when he's not even able to play is another, that's not great.
Yeah.
And it's something I think about too. Like, he's on radio or speaking an awful lot. Eventually, like, I think about that in my own life, like how often we talk 3 hours a week on this podcast. We both do radio. We both do TV. That's a lot of time with my mouth open and the potential that I stick my foot in it. And it's just from that sense, I feel for BG. Obviously, it can't happen.
Yeah, it's true. You misspeak just one little time. I mean, it's hard to shake that sometimes. And we don't certainly always get it right. Oh, I don't. You're pretty close.
I'm pretty good, yeah.
But yeah, BG didn't. He said he'd see those guys today. He didn't mention that if he called AJ or Jalen. He probably should have. And maybe he did. BG's such a positive guy. He's like not painfully in a bad way, but he's just takes such great pains to be positive all the time. This is really out of character for him. And look, he's in a new position now where he's not playing, and he missed a year many years ago, but he was hurt. But I don't know if it's got to be frustrating position to be in. I don't know. I can't really speculate on what made him say this stuff, but and why he thought it would be, it wouldn't create problems. But if I'm AJ, I'm not happy. If I'm Jalen, I'm not happy. Although Jalen, it's hard to read him. It's not hard to read AJ.
Yeah, at the very least, it's something they're gonna have to deal with this week.
And like somebody texted me last night, one of our colleagues, and said, "Boy, I bet you never seen anything like this before." And I remember in 1990 when it was almost identical. Like, some of the receivers were mad at Randall because he wasn't throwing the ball vertically, and he was just throwing short passes. And somebody went on WIP and like was ripping him, a player. And then Randall went on WIP. It's like history just repeats itself.
Well, the funniest part, and sometimes you just got to find humor in these situations. The Monday night, then Donovan is on the radio and has a comment about the criticism from AJ on the quarterback. And then all of a sudden T.O. is firing back at Donovan on social media. And it's like, time is a flat circle, man. This stuff is all cyclical.
It was 20 years ago, Donovan and T.O., 19 years ago for the when it went bad. But man, that's never going to go away.
Yeah. And that's why, like, interpersonal conflict or interpersonal relationships matter. Like, and when we talk about the positive aspect of it, I think we have to allow that there's sometimes negative aspects of it. Like, earlier this season, when I'm writing a story about how close CJ Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship are and how much it's helping them on the field, I think it's also fair to realize that when those dynamics are tested, it makes it more difficult to play well on the field together.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, when they started going super run heavy coming out of the bye, I mean, I remember talking about, like, this could be a problem and something that Kellen Moore's going to have to navigate. If they're only throwing 20, 22 passes a game, there's going to be some unhappy receivers. And that was like back in week 5 or 6. And it's kind of manifesting itself. AJ is actually having a really good year for the number of targets he's getting. I mean, he's been really good. His yards per target is highest in the NFL and highest in Eagles history. 12.9, probably. You probably know that number better than I do. But it's funny that I mentioned T.O. and Donovan, because they were really close when, Donovan recruited him. Donovan went to, I guess, with Tom Heckert, the GM. And he wanted T.O. here. He campaigned for him. And in T.O.'s book, T.O. wrote his book before things went bad. And he's like just praising Donovan for getting him here and how much that meant to him. And so quarterback receiver dynamic is always a tricky one.
It is now. I mean, I think it's probably fair to say Jalen and AJ are closer.
Oh yeah,
than those guys ever were. I mean, they were really close. I believe Jalen is the godfather to AJ's daughter.
Like was. Yeah. He. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. So I mean, like there are going to be conflicts at times, and it's about how you get over them. Yeah, this is such a fascinating discussion because there's so many different layers to it. There's the BG aspect of it. There's the initial criticism or the initial frustration of the offense. There's the actual football element of the passing offense and why it wasn't very good in that game and how it's taking a back seat. And like you put all of them together, and it's a lot. Yeah.
Nick was on WIP Tuesday morning, and I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it did show a lot of growth from Nick to where he was as a rookie head coach. I don't think he would have handled it as well publicly as he did.
He handled it really well. And he was asked directly about, and full disclosure, I work at WIP. I've worked with those guys, and so just should put that out there that I am on the Odyssey payroll. But I thought it was really interesting. He said, look, I see these guys, for 10 hours every day, as opposed to, you're seeing them for 3 hours when maybe AJ looks heated on the side. And they kept showing AJ talking to Devontae during the game, and being away from like the rest of the offense, which I don't know how unusual that is anyway, but
I don't think very unusual.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But yeah, he said, these guys eat lunch together, they work together, they practice together, they meet together. I mean, he made it clear that in his mind, there's no issues, there's no interpersonal issues between the two of them. And I thought that was important for him to say.
Yeah, and then I want to get back to what he said at his press conference on Monday. I asked him about the frustration and how he views that. And I think he finds some positives in it. And there's kind of a balance to strike, right? Because that locker room after the win on Sunday it had a little bit of a 2023 vibe to it. It's like a close win that they're not real happy with, and there's some frustration. And I think some of that's good, right? And I think Nick thinks some of that's good.
Yeah.
You want to set a standard for yourself. You want to be able to, like, if you're not playing up to that standard, you should be a little upset about it. But I think there's a renewed focus from Sirianni this year and he's talked about it a lot, is like also take some joy in the wins, because that was a big talking point last year. And it was like, are they even having fun winning all these games that are not the prettiest? Like you look at Kansas City, like they're winning the closest games in the world. They seem okay with it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's better, like what's the better outcome here. I think it's like trying to find the balance between wanting to hit the standard, but also like you do want to have fun, and because that builds the camaraderie within the locker room.
Yeah, and I think we'll learn a lot about this team because the Steelers are really good.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about the matchups later in the week, but this is not an easy game. They're home. But, I think because, look, what happened last year, and everyone messages me and tell me stop talking about it, but it's still fresh in people's minds. And this does feel like last year. This does kind of.
And as much as Nick doesn't want to talk about it anymore, he's changed his approach. At least with the one thing he mentioned on the radio that I want to follow up with him on is that he says in the Monday meeting, they show all the celebrations, like the team celebrations, when people are celebrating together, he shows them every Monday. So it's like, it's on their mind. It's like they want this team to be connected. And I think sometimes it's tough to like force that, but if you highlight the things and the times that you do that, I think that shows that what happened last year in a way has guided the way he's handling this year.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I just love that he keeps mentioning the way they reacted to Gainwell's touchdown against the Rams.
He mentions that one a lot, huh?
Every time. Yeah, must have been. But you saw that like when Tristan.
There was another funny moment, if I can add some levity, on Monday when he was talking about, AJ's frustrated. He knows he can help us. And he goes, Jalen knows he can help us. Devontae knows he can help us. And he's going to Dallas Goedert knows he can help us. Kenny Gainwell. And I messaged you. I was like, how long is he going to go? Like, are we going to get down? Anais Smith knows he can help us. Kerry Blasingame knows he can help us.
Yeah, well, there's not that many people that can help them, unfortunately, and that might be part of the issue. But that's another story. But yeah, no, I like the fact that he does that. And I was talking to Isaiah Rodgers about like the way the sideline erupted when Tristan McCollum knocked down that pass on fourth down, because here's a guy who's never really played before in a high leverage moment, very, very little, and they just went nuts. I mean, they were, yeah, and so you start worrying about delay a game because there's so many guys on the field. But that's been a cool thing about this team, and they have been really, really together and supportive, and they love when the backups do well, and it's a tricky thing to maintain, and that's Nick's challenge right now is keeping that vibe.
And the one I will read one really quick Nick Sirianni quote from the radio on Tuesday morning. Based on what's happened the last couple of days, we can say there's some 2023 vibes. I see a lot of 2022 vibes based off of how that kind of plays itself out, and then he goes through and talks about the team celebrations.
Yeah, and we'll see.
We're like, as much as people are like, don't talk about the previous years, like we're all in our minds like going back to what we've seen, and I think that's natural. And I think the team does that a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, some of the guys weren't here, like Saquon's not doing that, but it's possible the other guys are who were here.
You got a pretty good look at it up close the last day of the season.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, I'm really curious. I think they'll react positively. I don't think there's any really deep fissures here or anything like that. But I am curious to see how they respond.
Yeah, I am too. Maybe in a way it's like good if they're able to get ahead of it a little bit. Now, it's probably not good for them that it has to happen so publicly. And that's where the BG part of this is tough. But yeah, maybe they can make sure it doesn't. It's fun. It's tough because I don't even know like how much of an issue it is.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question here. What do you think has a bigger chance of hurting the season? Is it the passing game not being up to snuff, or is it interpersonal relationships that could tank the team?
I think it's a passing game.
Okay.
Yeah. And those two things might be a little related, a little overlap there, but it's a concern. And I mean, obviously they're running the ball great, but I mean, when they've wanted to pass, it hasn't. And it's funny because you look at Jalen's stats, and his stats look great. 2 touchdowns, no picks, 67% completion, 111, 110 passer rating. But the passing game clearly has to be better. And you're not going to win a Super Bowl throwing 100 yards a game. You just aren't. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about the passing game before we take our break.
So we'll talk about blasting game and the passing game.
It's not bad. Yeah, it has to be better than it was the other day. And just like the eye test tells you that it wasn't up to snuff, right? Jalen's holding the ball too long. He's not on time with some of these throws. The one theory we've heard is, and it's just a theory because it's impossible to know like what's going through his head, but the emphasis on not turning the ball over does it have him a little trigger shy?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that Sunday night after the game on the pod. I think there might be something to that. But he's also got the highest yards per attempt in the league during the winning streak. He's like at 9 yards per attempt. And
I thought Kellen Moore did a good job on Tuesday pointing out that, yes, this game was very bad. I don't know if the other games have been quite as bad. It's like you don't want to have too much recency bias.
Yeah.
What they did on Sunday was not good enough.
Yeah. And I think overall Jalen's played really well this year. I'm not really concerned about him, but obviously there's things. And I mean, there were some games earlier in the year where he was throwing 300 yards. He can do it. I do think that there's something to the fact that when you're running 40 times a game, I just think it's hard to get your quarterback into a rhythm. And I think that's part of the problem. And quarterbacks always talk about, getting into a rhythm. Like you'll see, whether it's Joe Burrow or something, just like throw like 8, 9, 10 times in a row, maybe a run in the middle. And they just get into that groove. And Jalen just hasn't had a chance to do that.
And that was another part of the AJ frustration and what he said after the game. He was asked, like, is it kind of difficult to get into a rhythm in the passing game when you're not throwing it that much? And he said, yeah, it's tough.
But also, they're having so much success in the running game. It's hard to say, all right, we're not going to run it that much just so we can get the quarterback into a rhythm when Saquon's averaging 6.5 yards a carry. So it's a tricky thing to find the right balance. It's not easy.
Yeah. And another potential theory, aside from just not feeling that rhythm in a game, is it possible that the emphasis on the run game, running as much as they have over the course of the last 2 months, has that, do you think, in any way stunted the potential growth of the passing offense?
I think it's possible. Yeah,
I do too. And it's like a completely hypothetical thing. There's no way to know. But there was a long period of time during this win streak when we're saying, yeah, there's going to be a game where they're going to need to pass. But they still have AJ Brown. They still have, like, you still have all these elements that should lend itself to that. But then you're in a game on Sunday where it really would have helped and they weren't able to do it. And that's kind of what leads to all the frustration.
And Sunday was a weird game because they just didn't have a lot of snaps. Carolina one time of possession,
they had 8 possessions.
Yeah, Carolina had like a 7-minute time of possession advantage, which I never would have dreamed would be the case.
It was bad complimentary football.
Yeah,
from the Eagles.
And they completed a high percentage of their third downs.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just that they didn't have many plays, they didn't have many drives, and Carolina did a better job. Carolina really did a lot of things that could have won that game. I mean,
yeah, they shortened the game, and I would imagine that's the way teams are going to try to play the Eagles, like try to play a little bit of a time possession game against them.
Yeah, and kind of goes into that. The run defense has been a little leaky the last month or so. It's something to keep an eye on. And look, they held Derrick Henry to 80 yards, and I thought they did a great job in the second half against him. And they did a good job against Hubbard in the second half. He averaged under 3 yards a carry, but teams are starting to hit some 6, 7 yard, 8 yard runs instead of like 2 or 3.
They were kind of staying like on schedule.
Yeah. So I think over the last month, Eagles are allowing close to 5 yards a carry. And they're like 7th in the NFL in rushing yards allowed, but they're 18th in yards per carry. So, or they were as of going into Sunday. So it's just something to keep an eye on, because if a game's close and the team's able to keep running it, that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Yeah.
All right. I hope we did that discussion well enough for everyone out there. I'm sure we'll get some complaints, but we thought it was important to lay it out the way we did. Let's take a break. We'll have our top 10s, some questions, and some thoughts on the coordinators on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and NissanUSA.com today.
All right, we're back on the Eagle Eye podcast presented by Nissan. Reuben Frank and Dave Zangaro. Reuben talked to all 3 coordinators today: Vic Fangio, Michael Clay, Kellen Moore. You want to just go through them? Any takeaways you have?
There wasn't a whole lot.
Yeah, there wasn't a ton. We don't need to spend an awful lot of time on it. I thought, Vic Fangio talked about Cooper DeJean. It obviously wasn't his best game. He finally, and even it wasn't a bad game. It's just like we've become accustomed to this incredibly high level of play. Adam Thielen got him a couple of times, but Vic said,
oldest wide receiver with a 100-yard game against the Eagles since T.O. in 2009 with Dallas. Yeah. But anyway, it's a good experience. So, I mean, Thielen's been, he's been around forever. He knows all the tricks. And I'm sure when Cooper DeJean watches the film, he'll learn a lot from it.
Yeah, Vic said it's good to get these lessons and wins. So, and I agree with him. And if you're a corner in this league, you're going to get beat at some point. So, Adam Thielen can still run routes. He's been pretty good there this year. He's missed some time with injury, but when he's been healthy, he's been a good receiver.
He's had a really good career, good long career. Vic talked about Slay, who I thought played really well Sunday. It was his best game of the year.
Gave up some, but made up for it, definitely.
Yeah, he gave up a couple, like a 13-yarder in the first quarter, 18-yarder, 19-yarder in the second quarter. But after that, I thought he was really good. It's been tough. The secondary's they haven't been all together a whole lot. I mean, Slay missed a lot of time. Reed's missed a couple games. And they've had different guys in there, and they've found a way. And it speaks highly of the two rookies who are the two guys. I mean, even Cooper didn't play till week 5, so there's been a lot of moving pieces in there, and I think they've kind of gotten through it really well.
Mm-hmm. There was the Vic stuff about C.J. Gardner-Johnson's big hit.
That was interesting.
Yeah, he praised the referees for not flagging it just because it was a big hit, and I think that's a really fair point, because in this league now, you see a big hit, it's like you don't even want to like react to it because you're just like waiting to see a yellow flag on the field. It's
like every deep ball, is going to be DPI, even if there's not, they're just going to call it.
Well, I'm not even saying DPI.
I know you're not. Okay. It was just a unrelated aside.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, and I think, look, it's good that they're trying to protect players, but I mean, we've seen clean legal hits that get personal fouls just because guy hit him hard. I mean, it's football.
Yeah, you couldn't have a more textbook clean hit than C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Led with his shoulder, feet never left the ground, waited until the ball got there. Like, it was a perfect hit.
Yeah. So it was interesting. You don't really hear coaches talk about officiating ever at all. So it was interesting.
Especially not in that light.
Yeah.
Like praising the officials. There was another play in that. I don't know if you watched that Chiefs game the other night, but DeAndre Hopkins had a chance to catch a ball at like the 3-yard line and it was a perfect hit again. And same thing. I'm holding my breath. Like, don't flag that. That was clean. And they didn't. It was a good job.
Yeah.
A ton else from Vic. He did mention that Dick Allen is his favorite player growing up. Richie Allen.
Correct.
Richie Allen to him.
It was, Dick Allen, I guess, when he got to the White Sox in like 74, 73, 74. I remember my uncle, my mom was from Cleveland, and we were in Cleveland visiting my uncle, and he took my brother and me to an Indians game at the old Mistake by the Lake, which 80,000 capacity, and there was like maybe 1,200 in the place. But we saw Dick Allen go 4 for 4. I'll never forget it. And 4 singles up the middle. He was just like locked in. That was a good team. They had Carlos May. They had Bill Melton. I sound like
Jim Schwartz.
I sound like Jim Schwartz talking about the Orioles here. But Vic was talking about how he went to Connie Mack to see the Phillies play. Didn't go to many Eagles games. Only went to 2 Eagles games as a kid, but went to a ton of Phillies games.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I had on Vic. Michael Clay talked a little bit about, obviously, Jake Elliott was the big topic there. Now 0 for 5 from 50 plus, but first he was asked about the range when they decided to punt. Didn't want to get into what the number was there going into the wind in that direction, but mentioned it was a good back and forth between Jake, himself, and Nick Sirianni. He did say that on the 52-yard miss, the operation wasn't as clean as it should be. So then I followed up, well, what about the operation wasn't clean? He didn't want to get into it, but I don't think he wanted to absolve Jake Elliott. He said Elliott would tell you he has to strike that better, but it seemed like he made, there were more issues on that play than
and
just...
Nick alluded to that too, Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
But I haven't watched it closely enough to see if it was a bad hold, bad snap. I don't know. But I just know it's a field goal he's got to make. And 52-yarders now, I mean, that's like almost an 80% kick in the NFL now. So
yeah, I think 50 plus in general, which is a big range, obviously, but it's, I think, 72% without Jake this year.
Yeah. And Jake was one of the best long range kickers in history coming into this year. I have all the numbers. They're in my story. They're actually in 2 stories because they're in my stat story and my Jake Elliott story. But it was like just the last thing I expected from the season. It's his 8th year. Maybe he doesn't have the strength in his leg that he used to. I don't know. But he's not going anywhere. You're not going to find anybody better on the street in the middle of December. So he's a guy. Yeah.
Michael Clay was asked if there's been any theme in these misses from 50 plus. He said, not really. They're all very individual. Obviously, one of them was a block for Myles Garrett. So tough to put that one on Elliott. Right. But it's got to get better.
Yeah.
because it's gonna bite them at some point if it continues.
And he's 18 for 19 inside the 50. But the way the league is anymore, like you get across midfield, you're starting to think, we're almost in range here. So you got to be able to make those, like even 50 to 59 is well over 50% kick. You gotta have a kicker who make those kicks.
You mean 55 to 59?
What did I say?
50 to 59.
55 to 59.
Okay.
Yeah, my bad. Yeah. So, and really, Michael Clay isn't really the kicking coach. I mean, Tyler Brown is, which is funny because the two kickers having the most trouble in the league this year are coached by Tyler Brown and his dad. His dad, Randy, is your former mayor and the Ravens kicking coach. And he used to be here a long time ago under Andy and Harbs, and he went to Baltimore with Harbs. But it's a concern, and we'll see what happens. I really hope that Jake Elliott has a chance to kick a 53, 54 yarder. I haven't looked at the conditions if it's supposed to rain or not, but
rainy day on Sunday.
Rainy day Sunday, always getting me down. But he's got to get it fixed. Got to get it figured out. I'm sure we'll talk to him tomorrow a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Michael Clay also gave some kudos to Avonte Maddox. It was a big play from Avonte downing that punt inside the at the 2-yard line.
Yeah. From
Braden Mann. The only other thing from Michael Clay.
Can I just expound on that?
You may.
I give him a lot of credit because it's not been a good year for Avonte Maddox. It's a guy he lost his job. I mean, he's just doesn't look like the same player. He was really good. Like, he was a really good player for a number of years. Been here since 18. So to make that play, you just like to see a guy who's been struggling and, just doesn't get down on himself, or at least outwardly. He made a huge play in that game. And, you say there's no way they're going to drive 98 yards for a touchdown in 3 minutes. They almost did, but that was a huge play. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, even as Nick said I think on Monday, he said, Avonte proved me right. Like, he proved that I made the right call. I'm not sure.
I don't know if that's
not sure that's the case, but it was a funny quote.
Yeah. He helped him certainly, because if it's a touchback, then I think a lot of people are really killing him for that.
Yeah. You're gaining 15 yards.
Yeah. The only other thing he said, they will bring up what happened in the Dallas game, touching a punt after it gets beyond the line of scrimmage. The Eagles' way they handle that is they yell poison, get away from that thing.
What a play that was. Yeah.
Not great.
I don't think
Bonesy's got to get that cleaned up.
I don't think Micah was real happy. Have you ever seen a guy show his emotions? I talk about AJ. Micah on the bench was like, and then he went in early.
Yeah, things aren't going great in Dallas.
No. They did some good things, though. I mean, but you just knew they were going to find a way to blow it.
And then Overshown gets hurt.
He's been really good.
He's been great.
Yeah.
Kellen Moore, a little bit of word salad from him about the passing game.
Yeah.
It does need to get better. We know that. He feels like they have the right pieces in place to do that. He trusts in Jalen and AJ and everyone involved in that process to get it better. We'll see. You've got to show us.
Kellen's thing is he'll say, that's a great question. Then he won't answer it. He doesn't say a whole lot. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Mm-hmm. You want to get into our power rankings?
Let's do it.
We do this every week now.
Hopefully we're not identical like last week.
I hope not. Yeah, that was awful. Start with number 1.
I moved the Panthers up to 4 just to make sure.
You still have the Lions number 1?
Still have the Lions number 1.
I do too. 12-1. Hard to argue against them.
12 in a row.
Who's your number 2 team?
I got the Philadelphia Eagles number 2.
God, are we going to do this again? I do also.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the question was how far down do you move the Bills?
Mm-hmm.
I was surprised at that result.
I was too. Now they lost in a shootout. They put up 42 points in that loss.
Yeah, and they were down big, and they came back. They just kind of ran out of time. Josh Allen had, 6 touchdowns, 3 passing, 3 rushing, which has never been done before. I don't know how much he helped his MVP odds, but they lost.
They did lose. Yeah. So who's your 3rd team?
I got Vikings 3rd.
Oh, interesting. I have the Chiefs 3rd.
Okay.
I don't know what to do with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I know that they're winning these games. The bit is unbelievable. Like, booting it off the upright and in is insane, but they're probably going to get the 1 seed. They have such an overwhelming chance to get the 1 seed in a way that kind of boosts them for me, because it's going to make it a lot easier for them to get through the playoffs.
Win 2 home games and you're good to go. I mean, the Steelers are 10-3, the Bills are 10-3. They're going
to be the 1 seed.
They're going to be the 1 seed. Yeah. Who do they finish with? They got the Browns, Texans, then they have the Steelers in Pittsburgh, and then the Broncos. So
it's not an easy finish, but
not an easy finish. They lost to the Bills, right? The Bills beat them in Orchard Park. So who the Bills finished with? Maybe the Bills could. The Bills have the Lions in Ford Field. Boy, that's tough at LA and then at Detroit. They got the Patriots, Jets, and Patriots to finish. So if they beat the Lions, they've got the head-to-head win over the Chiefs. I guess it's possible.
Possible. I think the numbers say it's like 73%.
Sounds about right.
Chiefs.
Yeah.
So I have Chiefs at 3. You have Vikings at 3. Who's your 4?
Chiefs.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Bills are my 4.
Okay.
I still think they're a really good team.
Yeah.
The problem is the Chiefs are ahead of them. And I think the Bills are probably a better team than the Chiefs. But if they play the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, I think I still expect the Chiefs to win.
Probably. It's funny how all year I've been saying the best teams are in the AFC, but my top 3 teams are the Lions, Eagles, and Vikings. So.
Yeah. I have the Vikings at 5.
Yeah. And I have the Bills at 5.
Yeah,
so
I get it. I still have the Vikings below those teams.
Okay.
Your 6 is the Steelers.
Yes.
Me as well.
How'd you know?
Your 7?
Packers.
And I think the Packers lost, right? But they're a dangerous team. They're the typical don't want to see them in the playoffs type team.
Yeah, they are. They're dangerous.
8.
8, I went Ravens.
I have the Ravens as well. 9.
Chargers.
I have the Chargers as well. 10.
I went Seahawks.
Oh my God! No, you didn't.
I did.
I do as well.
Really?
I snuck them in there, and it was either them, the Broncos, or the Commanders.
Yeah.
But it looks like the Seahawks are hot right now. They've won 4 in a row.
Yeah.
Someone's finally taking control of that division.
Yeah, and their team, I didn't really have high expectations. I thought Geno would kind of come back to earth. And they lost 5 out of 6 games before their bye. I mean, they did a great job. They were getting killed. I mean, they lost to the Bills by 21. They lost to the Lions. They're good teams, but they're on a nice roll. I mean, it doesn't hurt when you have Arizona, and San Francisco, and they haven't beaten a good team since opening day. Broncos probably. And they got the Packers, Vikings the next 2 weeks, so we'll see how real they are. But yeah, they're playing well.
All right, question time. If you have a question for us, it's eagleeye@nbcuni.com. That's eagleeye@nbcuni.com. If you're watching on YouTube, you have the QR code, scan it, send us a question that way. We got a ton of questions on what we already talked about today. We have a few Jalen-centric questions we'll get to, but as far as all the BG stuff and the turmoil, whatever, I left those out.
There's not much more we can say.
Exactly. All right. So the first question,
or that anyone wants to hear,
from Steve. I don't know if they wanted to hear it the first place. From Steve. Hey, Dave and Reuben.
Steve.
Long time, first time. I'll make this quick. I love Jalen Hurts. I have multiple jerseys of his. I was a fan since OU. He was my favorite player on this team by far, but this is getting a little ridiculous. He has to throw the ball. I know our run game is elite, but in my opinion, the only way we go far in the playoffs is with a balanced attack. These games aren't fun to watch when his throwing game is non-existent. My questions are, do you guys still trust Hurts to make throws when he needs to be our guy long-term? And do you think his lack of throws in the game plan, or he's nervous / unable to read the field and find open options?
I think every quarterback goes through periods where they're just not as sharp as they want to be or where they were. I mean, we've seen Jalen go through some stretches, and he's always worked out of them every single time, whether it's throwing too many interceptions or whatever it is, not finding open guys. So I have full confidence that he's gonna get figured out. He's a really talented guy. I mean, I agree with everything I said, with everything he said. I think it's a combination of all those things and the things we talked about earlier in the open. I think that's priority number one for Nick and Nussmeier and Kellen is to figure that out. And I don't think it's a huge thing. I think he's just got to, just pull a trigger sometimes when I'd rather see him be more aggressive and throw an interception every couple of weeks than just bottle up the way he has the last couple of games.
Yeah, and I've heard this before. I heard Jaws talk about it a little bit. It's tough sometimes when we're looking at the high angle saying, this guy's open. Why isn't he seeing him? It's like the vision in the pocket's a lot different. So it is tough to know exactly what he's seeing and what he's not seeing. But based on what we saw, there are some times where you got to pull the trigger. You got to just make the throw. You got to trust that the guy's going to be there. It goes back to throwing with anticipation and just trusting in it. I thought there were a few of those plays in this game.
There's also tremendous value in not turning the football over.
Yeah, there's a balance to strike for sure.
Yeah. I mean, when he doesn't throw interception, they're almost undefeated. So, yeah, you keep all that kind of in the equation.
And that kind of goes to the next question from Liam. Hey, Dave, Rube, and Alex. Alex gets a shout out there.
Hey, Alex.
I know you mentioned on the postgame pod that Jalen Hurts looks hesitant to air the ball out, and I totally agree. But do you think this is more by design rather than Jalen's mindset? I know you guys have mentioned in past training camp observations that Jalen's arm has looked extremely talented, so I wonder if the coaching is telling him to dial back the risky plays and mitigate turnovers at all costs. The Eagles are 9-0 in their last 9, and Jalen hasn't surpassed 250 passing yards. So maybe the philosophy is working. Love your guys' work and dedication.
I mean, he still has, I think he's got the third most 40-yard completions in the league. I think behind Burrow and Brock Purdy, I think. So, I mean, he is getting the ball down the field in the big picture. He hasn't the last 2 weeks. I mean, as long as completion was 35 yards the last 2 weeks. So it's not like this has been a problem his whole career. And maybe a couple, I think the one to Saquon was a short pass that he got a lot of yards after, but most of them have been vertical throws. So we've seen him do it. We've seen him do it for years. He's good at it. He's just got to get back to doing what he's been doing all his career. I think he will. Yeah,
I think Sunday was kind of like an outlier bad game.
Sure.
It was like the combination of the time to throw and the average air yards was kind of shocking.
Yeah.
Typically I think it was a 3.47 time to throw in that game and then 5.1 yards per attempt. Something's not adding up there. Typically if you're holding the ball, something's developing downfield, and that wasn't the case in this game.
Yeah. I also think one of the reasons the offense might look, so what was the word Jalen used post game? Unsynchronous or lack of synchronicity?
Lack of synchronization.
Synchronization. They haven't had Dallas, Devontae, and AJ together since the Bengals game. They've only had them together for four games. They don't have a lot of other weapons. I mean, obviously Saquon, but
man, they've got enough.
Maybe.
I mean, look around the league. They've got enough. They've got a good offensive line. They've got enough.
Got a great offensive line. But
there are teams that would do terrible things to get A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in their buildings.
No, but I'm talking about beyond those guys. I mean, they don't have a legitimate three.
They have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith.
I get that. I'm just saying, I think that might be part of the problem with the passing game is that there's just I don't know if they've become a little. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I think having another weapon might help. Having Dallas, AJ, and Devontae would be really nice.
I get it, but for how many years did we see this team not have one player as good as AJ or Devontae at that position?
Yeah, and they didn't win a lot of games, I guess. And I mean,
they won a Super Bowl without a receiver as talented as that.
But I mean, they had good receivers, and they had depth.
I'd rather have.
I'd rather have this.
Devontae
I'm just saying. I think when you're missing one of your weapons almost every week, it's hard to overcome. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah. I understand that that's been a struggle for them, but to me, that's just not an excuse. They have to be better.
I'm not saying it's an excuse. Yeah. I just think it's a factor.
Okay. It's a factor that they should be able to overcome.
I agree.
They still have enough talent. Next question from Jack. Hi, Dave and Rube. Just spent my Sunday evening watching as we nervously slipped past the Panthers. Jack is in the UK. That's why it was Sunday night for him. My question is about Jake Elliott. Is this possibly the final year in an Eagles uniform for Jake, as it seems that he is a shadow of his former self? If he makes that field goal, then I'd argue we win this game comfortably. I know he has a few years left on his deal, but I'm not sure how confident I am in him going forward after this season. Could we maybe try to get some draft capital for him, or do we hope it's just a bad season and keep him around next year to see?
Well, I think the next, the next month and a half, however deep they go into the postseason, is going to go along toward answering that. If he can get it back together and make some big kicks down the stretch and in the postseason where he's never missed, then you bring him back. But if this continues, and look, he's got a big contract. I haven't looked at the dead money, but it'd be hard to get rid of him. And I don't think anyone's going to trade for a kicker that can't make a kick. So you're not going to.
That's the big part of their job.
Yeah, it is kind of a significant portion of it. So it's a tricky situation. I think it's most likely that he's here next year and he figures it out. But there's that back of your mind. It's like maybe he just doesn't have it anymore. And when that happens with kickers, happens with, every kicker at some point just isn't the guy they used to be. He's in his 8th year. He's not a kid anymore. So I don't think anybody would be shocked if he's not here, but it's tough to replace a guy that good. It's kind of funny. The most accurate kicker in NFL history is Cameron Dicker, who they had for 2 weeks. I guess they kept him an extra week. But that's the nature of kicking in the NFL. And that's why guys like Jake and Justin Tucker have been, they're so good for so many years. And then they just lose it.
Think about last year, how big of a weapon Jake Elliott was. Like all those long kicks. Yeah. Now, maybe he was too good of a weapon that Nick relied on him too much at times. I don't think you have to worry about that this year.
Yeah.
I think if it's like a coin flip, they're going to have to go for it or they're going to have to punt.
And there's no doubt, I don't care what Nick says about the wind and the stadium conditions, there's no doubt in my mind that if Jake was 5 for 5 from 50 and out, he would have attempted a 54-yard field goal there to make it a 2-possession game.
Yeah, I agree with you. Because it's still you can still show confidence in your defense, but heck, more confidence because if you miss it, then all of a sudden it's a shorter field.
Right.
Next question is from Tom. Enjoyed the latest pod. First question, do you feel that the Panthers game was a wake-up call for the Birds? It seemed like the Eagles were listening to media and forgot that Carolina is an NFL team.
I don't feel that way. I think Carolina played really well in that game. And
I agree with that.
I don't think it was fluky. The Eagles did not play well, and Carolina played well. I don't think this team needs a wake-up call. I think I don't feel that way. Yeah,
there have been games in the past where it's a typical trap game and you think they play down to their opponent because they don't respect them. I didn't get that sense from this game.
I didn't either.
I thought they got good quarterback play from Bryce Young. Even though the numbers weren't great, I thought he played really well. I thought the Panthers had a really good game plan for that to kind of play ball control a little bit. So I give them credit. Now, the Eagles just didn't play well enough.
Yeah, and the Panthers are able to control the clock with the running game with Hubbard. They made some big plays. They converted a bunch of 4th downs. I don't look at it that way.
The second question from Tom, in the final game of the season, if it has no effect on playoff standings and Saquon is close to Dickerson's record, do they play him?
How close?
All those factors definitely matter.
Yeah. Now, I do think there's a pretty good chance that game might mean something. We'll see. The fact that there's 2 teams, it's a Vikings, Lions, we'll see how it goes, but there's a chance that game will mean something.
Yeah, not a great chance.
Not a great chance, but there's a chance. I think if he's within, what's the number?
I don't know. Let's say it's
the Giants.
In this scenario, they don't need this game. Let's say he's 60 yards behind the record.
I think 60, you do it. You might get that on 2 carries.
Man, I don't know. That would be such a huge gamble. Because if something bad happens, it is an all-time blunder.
Yeah. Well, it depends what you think of Kenny Gainwell. It's true. And the Giants would probably be out there headhunting.
I don't think so.
The guy.
I don't think they would be.
But
taking shots at the Giants character here.
I think
They're just a bad football team. Maybe they're fine men.
maybe. I think he might leave it up to Saquon. Saquon might say no. I don't want to.
The other part of it is like, I think the offensive line would really want to see him do it.
Yeah, they would. I think 60 is right around 60. Like I wouldn't go above.
Did I
70.
set a good over under number there?
Yeah, you did. We were talking about this on radio pregame. Like, what would that number be? I think if it's 100, you don't do it. Certainly. The last thing you want is to like. Remember when, somebody was going after the single season record for catches. Like, I hate seeing record hunting.
Well, the Eagles did it in Devontae's rookie year.
And they did it with Selleck. Remember, they were trying to get Selleck. Like,
poor Selleck. You were more broken up about that than he was.
No, he was. He finished his career with like 498 catches for like 399 yards or something. I remember Dale Murphy trying to hit his 400th home run. And he goes to the Rockies because they have a short field and altitude, and he never got it. He finished his career with 399. But I think if it's 50, you do it. If it's over 70, you don't. If it's between 50 and 70, I don't know. I don't know what the right call is. But he's the team. He's their biggest weapon. He's their MVP. You better be really careful.
All right. If you have a question for us, eagle@nbcuni.com. We appreciate all those. I've mentioned this before. There's just no way we can read all the questions and comments we get on air. I do read them. We appreciate them. But if you haven't got yours read and you're like, man, I've sent a bunch, we apologize. Hopefully we'll get to it.
What we could do is, like, in the postseason, just do a mailbag, a bonus podcast.
Yeah, we could do that.
We'll do that.
Yeah. All right. Again, eagle@nbcuni.com. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. We'll talk about the Steelers later in the week. We had a lot of heavy lifting earlier in this pod. Any final words, Rube?
No, see you in a couple days.
All right. Sounds good, everyone. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.